Yunus Musah being linked to Fiorentina, and then the U.S. already booking one of their opponents for the September window, Saudi Arabia. So don't go anywhere.
Martin, the reunion. Action.
This one's for you, Tommy.
A reunion to remember.
This show was and still is big for the culture.
Martin the Reunion, now streaming on BET+.
Welcome back, everyone, to In Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Conrad, also known as, what am I, Cream Cheese? Is that my nickname from last week? Cream Cheese.
Jimmy Cream Cheese Conrad.
And I feel like I should be on the And One tour. And Charlie Chuckwagon Davies and Hollywood Heath Pearce. We're breaking all things down, U.S. men's national team and our power rankings today, top 10. Make sure you hit like and subscribe if you're watching on the YouTubes. We just passed 5,000 subscribers. We appreciate you. If you are listening to this in audio form, make sure you hit subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Leave us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate that. We'll give you a high five in real life if we ever see you for doing that. And we got 2 more shows this week. We're going to keep coming with 3 shows every single week throughout the summer. And then, of course, as we gear up for this upcoming European season and any MLS news that's out there, of course, and anything else going around the U.S. soccer sphere and the September friendlies. Let's talk about that first. So, Charlie, I'll come to you. We already got one of our opponents. It's looking like it's going to be Japan and Saudi Arabia, but Japan hasn't been announced yet, but Saudi Arabia has. Are you happy with that opponent to face in the September friendly? Did you want to see somebody different?
Do I have to be honest here?
Well, I don't know. You've been honest, pretty honest with your power rankings at this point.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I'm not pumped about neither of those 2 opponents. And I get it. You want to play different types of opponents, but give me the best. Give me France. Give me the Netherlands. I want the top teams to test ourselves against. Maybe an Argentina or a Brazil. That would have been nice to go with a France. Because, we are playing England, and Japan and Saudi Arabia, no disrespect to those teams, are not going to prepare you for England. And I know it's a work in progress, and we want to get everybody on the same page. And maybe if you play a slightly less competitive opponent, maybe it's a good thing because you win the games and you have that kind of spirit heading into World Cup camp. But we got to be playing against the best. Charlie, it's a constant test.
Do you think that a game like that is just for lack of the fact that, Golbazan, the Iranian podcast, was talking about how the Iranian Federation was really poor at getting ahead of matches, right? To know that you got this window and you're competing with everybody for a good matchup, right? So everybody's looking for good games leading up to the World Cup. Do you think it's just a lack of availability with teams? Do you think it's them thinking a little bit like Morocco, Saudi, they're going to be a little bit more Iran-like? Do you think, just thinking about what the value is, do you think it's just because that's who's available, or that's who or do you think there's some sort of tactical reason behind that? Because you could play a Poland or something like that could be maybe closer to England. Who else would you like to see that would be England or a Wales type?
Well, I think England's a top 5 team in the World Cup. So you're only looking at Belgium or France, Holland.
But is it a style of play versus a ranking system that you want to prep for?
I think that's what goes into scheduling these games is the style of play, which I understand. But I would rather us be tested against the best, no matter what the style is, because that's what a World Cup is, adjusting. And in some cases, teams who might be known as being a very defensive-minded team, maybe they attack, maybe they switch it up, and they're pressing high. So you have to just be flexible with who you play. And maybe there's times where you play France and they concede possession, or maybe there's a red card or injury. You never know. So I'd rather play against the very best to kind of raise our level, to see our deficiencies, rather than playing teams that we're going to have a majority of the possession. We're going to probably dictate the tempo.
I just want to say that Saudi Arabia and Japan both automatically qualified out of the Asian region. Saudi Arabia won the group. Japan was in there with them. Australia were the 3rd place team. And Saudi Arabia, 10 games, 7 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss, only gave up 6 goals in those 10 games. Japan, 7 wins, 1 draw, 2 losses, only gave up 4 goals in those 2 games. I don't mind playing one of these 2 teams. I just don't understand why we're playing both. To your point, yes, Charlie, I would love to have seen, one of the other top,
Who would you have rather played between Saudi Arabia and Japan if you had to pick one? And then who would be that other opponent? Would you rather a France or a Holland or an
question.
Argentina, Brazil?
Well, so that's a good question. I would say with regard to Saudi Arabia, not that we play like Mexico, but they're in a group with Mexico. They're in a group with Poland and Argentina, Saudi Arabia. And I feel like they gain more from playing us than maybe we gain from playing them. I don't want, again, like just as you said, I don't want to disrespect either one of these nations, but it would have been nice to potentially play against a team that mirrors what we're going to see. So with regard to, I don't play one or the other. I don't have any there's something about Japan that I
will say those are 2 World Cup teams though, Jimmy. Like these are two teams that are going to be your Wales, your Iran.
Yeah.
You know, Saudi being more type of like that, the more like kind of Middle Eastern, North African technical style of play. Players good on the ball, explosive, quick, very different. Japan, a different style of play. But like, are you trying to win your group? Are you trying to get out of your group versus? And I agree with you, Charlie. It would be great to play a Belgium or France, but you also got to find a way to get through Wales and get through Iran, and those are going to be the games that get you out of your group.
I see 100% where you're going with that, and I get it. But let's just say you don't get those results in those 2 games. How deflating is that heading into a World Cup versus losing? If you do lose to Argentina or France or Holland or a Belgium, and you're still saying, hey, there were a lot of positives. Maybe we lost a tight one, or you're like, hey, that's who you're trying to compete with, because ultimately we're not looking to outpace the Asian nations. Like that's not who we want to be stacking up against. We want to be competing against the Frances and the Englands and the Belgiums and the Argentinas, the Brazils. The only way you're going to do that is by testing yourself constantly against that type of level. So I would say that's great that you get to see how those teams work, but we want to be playing against the best, and it really should be dictating on how you play. Make them adjust to you, not so much, oh, they're in a low block, so we have to. You just play the game, and however the game is, you dictate it, the tempo. You understand kind of the ins and outs of the tactics, and you just play. But it's just got to be a high level, and the tempo's got to be great.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's, in some ways, I'm trying to look at the top nations and going, well, which one looks like England out of the top nations? Now, again, Saudi Arabia, Japan, either one of them is fine, but it just would have been cool to maybe have a different, a team that maybe looked and tasted like England a little bit. And Belgium, maybe with Lukaku. I mean, Brazil can hurt you in so many different ways. France, obviously they got Benzema and they're just littered with talent. Argentina, I mean, Lautaro, I don't know. I mean, it's tough. I don't know. I wonder. When we did interview Greg not too long ago, he had mentioned that he wanted to face a team from Asia. I just didn't know they were going to do 2 teams from Asia. But to your point, Heath, and I'll let you take it from here. These are 2 World Cup teams that might challenge us in a way that would get us prepared for the Iran and Wales, as opposed to really getting us prepared for England.
Yeah, and again, this is where I'm the most confused, because I remember personally, anecdotally, the 3 of us would have much rather played against Spain or Belgium or France or anything that you could challenge yourself and test yourself, right?
Portugal.
I mean, Italy, Netherlands, Europeans. I think if it was a Brazil or Argentina, I see it as less applicable at the moment, just because it's a completely different style of play. But in any top European side is going to have some elements of the way that England are going to play, right? And England are the ones that you're gunning for, at least from a level, just to test yourself against the top team, because it's been a while since this national team has gotten to play against a top team with a full roster. And so I get that, but at the same time, again, when you look at scheduling, it's better than I think we're going to see a lot of other opponents have in terms of their matchups, whether those are stuck for, I'm not sure if September has some Nations Leagues game in Europe or something like that, but it seems like at least they're at a certain level of caliber that are going to have some challenges along the way, and some mystery to the team because they're not in your region and that sort of stuff. So that hopefully there's some applicable things we can learn and take out of these matches versus what I think we'll see from, we'll see what Canada does. We'll see what Mexico does. I'm not sure if their schedule is out and who they have to play, but I would say in terms of grabbing teams that have some application to a World Cup, there's something there, I think, to get out of it.
No, there's still World Cup opponents. I don't want to take anything away from that. I remember leading up to 2006, our last tune-up game before we left to go to Germany was Latvia. And I remember thinking, I don't know if this is the best preparation for Czech Republic and Italy and
It wasn't.
Ghana. And it wasn't. We got knocked out in the groups. Thanks for
No,
reminding
Jimmy,
me,
I can tell
Charlie.
you.
So-
I can tell
so
you,
point
it wasn't.
taken. Yeah,
It wasn't.
It was a
wasn't.
bad idea.
So let's pivot now from these teams overall to Yunus Musah, who we talked about before. And apparently he's being linked away from Valencia to Fiorentina. So Heath, I'll come to you first. Do you like this move where Gennaro Gattuso, actually, who was at Fiorentina for like 3 weeks before he got out of there, is now taking over at Valencia? And now you have this potential link to Serie A. Do you think that's a good spot for Yunus Musah to go? I mean, I assume the overall answer for all three of us is, well, if he's going to get to play and play meaningful minutes, then hell yeah, that's what we want him to do, because felt kind of spotty with Valencia.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say because on one hand, you've got who is that Rocco Camiso, the owner?
Yes.
Yeah.
Camiso.
So you've got an American owner
Cosmos.
who is beloved there in a lot of ways, but is a controversial kind of infamous figure in the U.S. soccer landscape, but has gone in and is beloved by the fans and his willingness to put investment in. But there's also sort of this constant tension. So I think having that element, and I know we don't want nepotism in anything, but we've seen that there is a faith in American players that you just mentioned. McCourt, we just saw with, obviously Ricardo Pepi, I think is the wrong move, owned by an American ownership group, but it could be a good entry point for him. But there's also running the risk of what does that mean? Is there a larger play here, or is this a pure footballing reason? Now, I think Yunus Musah could play in Serie A from the start and be a starter and be a contributor from the very beginning. I do think that Yunus Musah has probably been written off at Valencia because he's another player that we talk about, Brendan Aronson in the national team being super sub. Yunus Musah is young. He's got all the tools to play multiple positions, and he brings something every time he's on the field. Now, the downside of that is that he's young, and when things go wrong or things are tense, you have a lot of managers, old school managers, that look towards experienced players, and that's going to hurt him at this time. So to have a new team or a new club could be a great stepping stone for him to be in peak form come the World Cup. It's not Valencia, but Valencia is not the Valencia it was. And clearly he's in and out of the team after his last injury. It took him a long time to kind of get the minutes that we had seen that he was getting earlier on in the season. And so, yeah, I think a move is good. Fiorentina could be the right one. So
I'll jump in this, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Charlie, is that Lucas Torreira, who was on loan at Fiorentina last year, played 31 games in the league in Serie A last year, was their rock in that position. Now he's a little bit more of a 6, and we know that Musah likes to play a little bit higher up the field or off the shoulder of the 6. But it's interesting that Torreira, maybe somebody else can fill that gap, and then we could have Musah get into that midfield. But Torreira looks like he's out. They fell through with Arsenal and Fiorentina, and he might be on the move to Roma, which would be an interesting signing for Jose Mourinho. But it does open up some space in that midfield for Fiorentina. And if we could get a good run of games, I guess my question for you then, Charlie, is how do you think Yunus Musah would do in Serie A? Because it's obviously a different style than what you see in La Liga.
Yes, I think he would do very well in Serie A. And,
do you think they see him as an 8, by the way, or a winger?
I think as an 8.
Yeah.
I think his play with the U.S. men's national team has allowed people to see his quality in a different position. And when you watch him play, he doesn't seem as a winger, right? The way he moves, the way he can control the ball, and the tempo, and the way he's won second balls, it just seems like it's a perfect position for him. So I think the U.S. has helped him be seen in that way, because I think Valencia playing him on the wing isn't really playing him to his strengths. You can show here and there, but ultimately you want him in the midfield just because he has that ability to break through on the dribble. So in terms of Serie A, he would be an asset on most clubs. So I'd like to see him make the move, just because I think he'll be valued in a different position, because at Valencia they see him only as that player.
Yeah, I'm with you. I want him to go to Fiorentina. I think that he's done what he's going to do at Valencia. If they stick with him, I think he would chip away and get his minutes and go. But it feels like maybe under Gattuso, maybe his style of how he likes to play doesn't fit that system. And if Fiorentina actually wants him and can see his future somewhere in that midfield, and you have an American owner who wants to play the American player, there might be some good energy there for him to get some valuable minutes ahead.
It's got to be the right club, though. It does. It's got, like, there is we've all been through the same cycle, that there is a desperation to make sure you are in the best position possible going into a World Cup. Now we're only 5 months out. That there is a theme in the national team, at least for Yunus Musah, and he's going to go to the World Cup. But he spends 5 months on the bench. That could change the narrative. Now, I still think he's a starter based on his performances, but 5 months is a lifetime for a player, and the anxiety of knowing like the stepping stones of losing or wasting time, that I think we see the desperation. We saw that Ricardo Pepi going to in Augsburg. I don't think that was a desperation move. It's one of the few clubs that could afford him, but you make the wrong decision. I think this season Ricardo Pepi will get minutes, but I still think it's the wrong club, and you don't want to get stuck at the wrong club because of how long you could get stuck there.